Hi, I'm Debi Latour, and I'm here with Bob Radocy, and we want to talk to you about our series, Empowering People, Empowering Prosthetics. And it's specifically directed toward persons with hand absence or hand impairments. This particular series is a collaboration of both of our efforts, yours with Instinctive Inventions and mine as founder of Single Handed Solutions. So here we are, introducing ourselves yet again. My name is Debi Latour. I'm an occupational therapy practitioner for the past 45 years, and I also have an upper limb absence due to a congenital anomaly.
And I was involved. I'm an engineer, design engineer, and a user, and I'm an inventor of different types of prosthetic products. And I have an acquired limb loss due to a trauma when I was in college. I was 22 years old. I was in a car wreck that resulted in the crushing of my forearm, so I became an amputee back then, and then got involved in prosthetics because of my dissatisfaction with the kind of designs that were available to me in the 1970s.
So we have a lot of years of experience, and I think that when we sat down and figured it out, I've got 68 years with limb difference, 67 of it which are prosthetic experience, and you've got how many?
Well, I don't know. It's been 50 years without my hand. So yeah, over 100 years between us, even though we hate to admit it.
All right, so why are we doing this? What's our goal, our aim?
Well, we're here to help provide you with information, make sure you're a better consumer, a better advocate for yourself, but it's to give you the kind of background that you need to be a better prosthetics consumer, really. That's what it boils down to, and live a healthier life.
Mm-hmm. And it also offers you, hopefully, the opportunity to engage with other persons within a community, people like us, persons with upper limb absence or congenital difference. And ultimately, we want to empower you with skills, with strategies and tips and tricks, all toward that aim of the ultimate goal of great quality of life.
And who are you? Well, you may be a consumer of prostheses, but you may be a family member, you may be a healthcare professional. So these series are designed to try to provide a wide array of people with the information that we've gathered with over 100 years of prosthetics experience that we want to share with you to help you be a better provider if you're involved in medical care.
Absolutely. So let's get going with this. We've already published 5 episodes, and we are now today starting episode 6, which continues with having an understanding of the rehabilitation processes, but particularly focused on evaluations and interventions. All right, so we left off with the idea of the collaborative process. So if you missed that episode, we talk about it in session 5. And you can go back and recapitulate that. But one of the most important aspects or points of the evaluation is for the practitioner to get to know you as an individual. And that means really developing an appreciation for your past history, including your experiences and what's meaningful to you and important for you to be able to do. It also offers a pathway for you to better understand the entire rehabilitation process. Because believe it or not, we don't just take something off a shelf, give it to you, and you automatically, spontaneously are able to use it. It's actually a more in-depth process where we need to get to know you. We need to really understand your expectations, what is meaningful to you, what you need and want to be able to do in life, and then work with your insurance company to authorize that particular technology, and then work with you and your community OT practitioners to be able to learn to use the device. And it's not just learning to open and close it, it's being able to open and close it in a variety of planes and work at different surfaces and heights, sitting, standing, countertop, tabletop, coffee table height.
And having a prosthesis made for yourself is a time-consuming process. It could take months to have a good prosthesis made. So you need, as Deb was saying, you need to really communicate clearly to your prosthetics provider what your needs are, how things feel throughout that entire process, and develop a rapport with that individual, because the better you can communicate two ways, both ways, the better outcome you're going to probably have.
Absolutely, and that takes, understanding the expectations, but even realizing what the concessions might be, what we have to give and take. Also understanding that you can have a prosthesis that helps you to do a lot of things, but maybe there are still some other things that you want to be able to do that particular device doesn't help you with. So then being able to move to another level and get more technology. Those are kind of the important facets of an evaluation. We take a lot of measurements as well. There's a science to it. We're looking at your range of motion. We're looking at your circumference of your residual limb and even the shape of it so that we can best fit you. Oftentimes we're using both standardized as well as non-standardized assessment tools to help quantify what your abilities are and where those gaps in care might be so that we can best help you.
The process needs to involve more than just yourself in the process. You try to bring family in, you try to bring peers in. The more support that you can have in this process, especially early on, probably the better outcome you're going to have.
And it goes back to that interprofessional collaborative process. So, and that can include clinical practitioners in different settings, as well as externally community providers who may be providing care for you in other arenas, but helping them to better understand the technology. Many times people have case managers or even life care planners, so that it helps to negotiate what kind of prosthetic needs a person might have throughout life. It's not just about this moment, it's about moving forward throughout your life.
Yeah, if you have an acquired limb absence through a trauma, whatever it might be, you know, the team approach, what we refer to as the team approach, is ideally the best way it can be done, but it's not always available to everyone. And so in many cases you have to reach out and ask about it. You know, am I going to get occupational therapy, or am I going to get physical therapy? Am I going to have counseling about this or counseling about that? And if you don't reach out or you don't ask those questions, sometimes you're not going to get that assistance.
And even being able to access peer support. It's not unreasonable to ask your practitioners, could I talk with another person who you have treated with this very same problem, and find out how you helped them? What a great way to engage in a community, really. After that evaluation process, there's a lot of work that happens behind the scenes. Oftentimes your practitioners need to do a little research, not because they don't know what they're doing, but because they want to be able to best argue and defend your need for and the benefits of the particular prosthetic technology that you're requesting or that they are requesting on your behalf. Many times it does. Most insurances require a prescription from a physician, so we have to be working with your medical practitioners and getting that information. We need to submit for prior authorization. And believe it or not, insurance companies require contemporary evidence, which means we need to find out what is the latest and greatest in terms of recent studies and what are they saying that will benefit you. And then we can use that time to actually prepare you for whatever device you're going to get. So one of the first things that happens is that casting and measuring. Now, I remember being a little girl at Shriners way back in the late 1950s and even the 60s, because they were still using plaster. And I remember that smell as they would drape my residual limb with it, and I'd have to wait for it to harden, and then having fear and trepidation as they cut that thing off. Not the arm, but the mold off of it, right?
Cut the casting off, huh?
Cut the casting off. Do you remember, did you have that experience?
Absolutely, and it's done in more modern techniques right now, but
so much better.
but it's still a pretty intimate process. They're actually, and it works the best. They have new techniques where they can actually scan your arm now with surface scans and things. But for many of us who have had prostheses built, I personally feel, anyway, that somebody that's hands-on makes a personal cast on my arm, who really can get a feel of the anatomy that I have on the bones of my elbow, my olecranon, my medial lateral condyle, understand what I have to be able to support a prosthesis, and then be able to build from that and make my prosthesis. I prefer that. I like that, quote, intimacy, that hands-on approach to someone working with me, and it's truly a custom fit prosthesis.
Oh, absolutely. And I can relate to what you're saying. Even though I didn't have an acquired loss, mine is congenital, But on the terminal aspect of my residual limb, I have little nubbins and I have dimpling. And if one were to actually palpate those little dimples, you can feel the ends of the bone, my radius and my ulna in there. So I too like it when my practitioner has a hands-on approach and is experiencing that. Not only that, as a person with a short transradial difference, congenital, one of the secondary conditions that we have is a dislocatable radial head. So I like my practitioners to actually be able to perceive that, because then I know that I'll have a better suspending socket that's going to be more comfortable for me.
What Debbie's saying in simpler language is that she can hyperextend her elbow.
Oh yes, I can.
So it's really kind of scary when you look at it. But that's true of most people. Most kids or individuals who are born with a congenital hand absence also have that ability. We don't know why, but it's
that dislocatable radial head.
Yeah,
well, the muscles haven't developed to be able to really support the bones in their place.
And it's a challenge for the prosthetist, because especially the shorter you are, there's less anatomy that you get to build that prosthesis around. And so it takes a special technique, and it takes an upper limb specialist to be able to do it correctly and understand exactly what Debbie's talking about.
Absolutely. In our previous episode, I talked about how the socket is really the most important part of the prosthesis, at least to me as a practitioner and a consumer. And that's because it is the most intimate part. And if it feels uncomfortable, I'm not going to wear it, right? And then I've got a rejected prosthesis, and people will assume that I'm rejecting prosthetics where it's just a bad fit. So the socket is really so important to proper use and successful outcomes. Let's just talk, you mentioned the scanning, but another way that practitioners are making molds is with that alginate, I think it's a silicone, and it's kind of like, have you ever made goop out of cornstarch and water? And it's got this funny texture to it. Well, it's kind of like that, and the prosthetist will use tongue depressors to drape this material and on your residual limb and then let it harden, and it makes an incredible accurate mold of your residual limb that they can then use to make a plaster rendition, like a negative mold, right, of your residual limb itself. Right. And then they make the socket from that.
They actually create, using this casting that they take, they then pour into it more rigid material like a plaster or something, and they create a replication of what your arm anatomy is. Right. And then because there's a lot of nuances to building a prosthesis, they modify that. They might add material, they might remove material on that positive cast that they have of your arm, and then that allows them to fabricate this custom socket, which most likely involves a soft, flexible liner surrounded by more rigid materials to give it the kind of strength and such. It needs to give you be able to be suspended onto the anatomy of your elbow or whatever part of bone and or remnants you still have left in your arm.
Exactly, and once they have that comfortable socket that is usually kind of a clear plastic, like a thermoplastic kind of material, then they can build off of it once they know that socket feels comfortable on you. So that is a really important time for you to speak up.
Yeah, and taking your, you'd call it in many cases it's a test socket. So you want to be able to take it and you want to load it, you want to rotate it, you want to put it under some load, you want to push against it, you want to see if you can pull against it, and then determine and feel what that socket feels like. And if it's not comfortable in a particular area, you point that out, and that prosthetist can come in, he can modify that socket, try it again, modify it. Okay, now it feels comfortable. Because in that part of the process, you're really defining all of the final aspects of it, and then after that it becomes a definitive prosthesis, and your ability to change it becomes less and less. You have less ability to accurately modify that prosthesis.
So once the prosthetist has that prototype kind of device, and you have given feedback on it, it's a great time for you to begin to learn what's involved with prosthetic training and to actually engage in that. So in the previous episode, we talked about use of the prosthesis simulators. So rather than getting back into that, I ask you to look at session 5 and listen to that, because we have a great case study that we share about successful outcomes with the use of the simulators. But that's a time that we can use that. If your therapist doesn't have access to a simulator, there are some other techniques that they can use. So you can have them contact me. I'd be happy to share ideas about the soda bottle prosthesis and ways that that can be incorporated into your initial training, your preliminary training. And even if the prosthetist is willing to give a second test socket that's been refined, we as OTs can use that to help with prosthetic training on a preliminary basis before you actually get your device.
Yeah, the tissues of your arm, and I equated it to putting on a new pair of maybe above ankle boots or something like that. It takes a little getting used to. Your skin tolerance, the skin shear that goes on. It's not. I'm not talking about pain, but just the pressures and stuff that are involved in what would be like putting on a hunting boot or a hiking boot or something like that grasps your ankles, and then walking in it and hiking in it for a while. There's a little break-in period that goes on, not only in the boot or the hiking boot or whatever, but also a little bit in the prosthesis and a little bit on your anatomy. Your anatomy, your skin gets a little tougher and can tolerate shear or pressure in ways that it needs to be able to effectively wear a prosthesis.
Absolutely. So what Bob is talking about is a really essential element to preparatory training, and it's referred to as socket tolerance. Another aspect that I like to work on in this stage involves building up the person's tolerance to the weight of the prosthesis. Now, depending on the kind of prosthesis that you are going to get, as well as your level of limb absence, the prosthesis could weigh anywhere from just a few ounces to several pounds, even 5 to 10, 15 pounds if it's a very high level loss and if you have a lot of electric componentry. So helping you to adjust and begin to accommodate to that weight, that additional weight that will be suspended from your residual limb, and helping you to tolerate newly acquired limb length. Because believe it or not, our brains are incredibly plastic and flexible. And in the space of time in which a person loses a limb and then receives a prosthesis, your body starts to, and your mind starts to adjust to that, even with your movement in space. So getting you reused to reacclimated to an extended limb length that's symmetrical to your opposite side is an important facet of preliminary training. We can also work on controls training regardless of what type of prosthesis you're getting. We can obviously tune it in with what that device will require. Teach you some prevention and protection techniques of your available anatomy. I usually recommend that for preparatory training that it includes one-to-one intervention with an occupational therapy practitioner about 3 times a week. It should include a home program for follow-through, and it can also, does not have to always be in person. It can be through telehealth.
Telehealth.
So then what happens when that prototype is actually delivered to the person? Do they just try it on and go home? Well, some practices actually do that, but many practices are starting to let the user take that device home and use it for a few weeks, even with their therapist, so that they can start to see where else there might be problems with it before that prototype device is turned toward a permanent device.
Yeah, definitive prosthesis. And it's an important thing if it's available to you, because until you actually get a prosthesis and using it in what you'd call activities of daily living or ADL, you don't always know exactly how it's going to perform, or subtle changes, the angle of the wrist on the end of your prosthesis, the way the prosthesis curves to allow you to reach midline. There are a lot of subtleties that, as you become a more and more experienced consumer of prosthetics, you know what works best for you, but when you're new at it, you don't know. So getting it into putting that prosthesis prototype into different environments and using it will help you, again, improve the communication you need to your provider, again, to give you the best outcome possible.
Yeah, you mentioned a really good point. Oftentimes, we as new consumers, and even sometimes experienced consumers, we don't always know what we don't know. So we don't know what to comment on, what's okay to say is good or not good. So one of the things I like to employ to help guide people toward better self-advocacy and a better understanding of what we're looking for and what they should be looking for is a feedback form. So we developed this feedback form with our interprofessional collaborative team that included our patient clients, and we asked them what's important to you. And then we went and asked each professional discipline what's important to you. And then we use that to guide any feedback or changes to that unfinished product. So that's a helpful tool. If your prosthetist doesn't use a feedback form, maybe you should ask them for one. We also like to work on how to put on and take off this device at that stage and begin to teach people about that. Help them to have an understanding about the fit and the comfort of the device, how it might actuate and how they can apply that actuation to some very simple functional tasks. And then, of course, continuing with that prevention and protection techniques.
Yeah, prosthesis being made out of materials that are not always soft and flexible. You can injure yourself at some level, you might hurt someone else. So learning again what a prosthesis is about and the materials and how it operates in space and you're getting comfortable with how you use it are all important stages in your growth of learning how to use a prosthesis better.
Yeah, and certainly learning to do some of these gain some of this knowledge and insight with a prototype device is incredibly helpful, and it's a great use of the time.
Sure. Right? One of the things that occurs to me is when you're wearing a body-powered prosthesis that I wear, it functions in different body areas, so that you need to learn what you can do in certain areas. I can operate very close into my midline. When I reach out, I've got to concentrate a little bit more on opening and closing my thumb. Absolutely. Let's say you get behind the wheel of a car. You want to use a steering wheel. You have to understand how to reach and grasp and let go at the same time. So there's a learning process, there's practice involved. It just doesn't happen, but it becomes spontaneous after a while. I've used a prosthesis so long, something, I have a pencil rolling off a table, I'll spontaneously go and try to grab it. I'll only get it 99% of the time. The 1% of the time it'll get
I bet you get it 100% of the time.
But it becomes, a prosthesis will become a part of your body over a period of time, and you'll just use it instinctively.
Absolutely, and that's referred to as embodiment. And embodiment is kind of a unique process, and I think of it as something special because it really speaks to a true incorporation of the prosthesis into our sense of self. Not just our body schema and how we move, but it's also our identity. Like, I identify as a prosthesis user.
And if it's a newly acquired prosthesis, it goes back to getting some specific kinds of training too. You know, one-on-one early on, you know, and then evolving into, you know, more home training and some of the other things that you talked about.
Exactly. So the treatment protocol for this particular stage is exactly that. It's continue with especially one-to-one intervention, a couple times a week, 2 to 3 times. It depends on what your availability is, the availability of the practitioner, and what your insurance will pay for. But this process usually is only a few weeks long because you want to get that information and return that device to your prosthetist so that they can begin to make your device for you. And we as practitioners can do this using telehealth or having you be on site with us. And we give you a home program so that you can continue with those repetitious skills drills to help develop your control, begin to apply those skills drills toward actual simple functional tasks, start to develop your own identity as a prosthesis user.
Make you more comfortable in social situations, that you're confident you can pick up and hold a can or a cup or a glass, whatever it might be.
Yep, and even begin to wear your device out in public and start to acclimate yourself to what your social experiences will be like in that realm. This is also a great time to learn to use adaptive strategies and assistive devices in new ways as they'll apply to your prosthesis use. Well, then that brings us to the actual finished product, which is referred to as the definitive delivery. Again, we like to ask feedback and make sure that our patient clients are happy with the device, that it feels good before we have them sign a delivery form.
And you'll have a lot of input into what your prosthesis looks like. Prosthesis I'm wearing a Grip 5, which has been, this one's fairly colorful. I have different versions of this. I have one in all black, the Black Knight. But the exterior surface of your prosthesis, mine is kind of a high-tech carbon fiber look. But your prosthesis can have any numbers of different looks. It could be flesh-toned. You can have decals on it. You could put cloth, fabric kind of colors over it. It can be made in virtually any color you want. So you can input to your prosthetist and express yourself through what your prosthesis looks like, as however you feel most comfortable with it.
Exactly, you're personalizing it, and there have been multiple studies. Think of one in particular by a man named Craig Murray, Dr. Craig Murray, out of the UK, who talked a lot about prosthesis use and what helps us to identify as prosthesis users, and what leads to successful use, which also leads to the question, what exactly is successful use? But we're going to talk about that maybe another time, way in the future. But personalizing your device is really important.
And one of the things I found that helped me when I first began to use a prosthesis was overusing it, using your prosthesis, forcing yourself to use it in tasks that you might not necessarily have to. You could always reach for something with your sound hand, but making myself do it with a prosthesis. And by doing that over and over again, more than I naturally would, you just become accustomed to doing it. So your body learns how to use your prosthesis more spontaneously. And so I think that forcing yourself to use your prosthesis, especially early on, to do tasks that you normally may not really do with it, is going to help you be a far better prosthetics user.
Absolutely, absolutely. So once a person has received their definitive device, you can still continue with OT, particularly if you need to refine some of your skills. It can be individual, oftentimes it should be, especially at that beginning, because we get, some people might be embarrassed about frequently dropping things or bumping into things because you're learning something all over again. But being able to transfer all these unique skills that you're developing and apply them and integrate them into your own functional schema, your routine, your daily routine, is part of what we do.
Self-care, taking care of yourself,
Absolutely.
Grooming, whatever it might be, all of those things will come into play. And doing bimanual tasks, doing things that require two-handed participation, training yourself to do those and using your prosthesis bimanually is extremely,
especially
extremely
so that we can contribute to home life. I mean, you know, we all have family situations that are often collaborative and almost like a mini community where we all contribute something. Maybe one person is the one who actually doesn't mind cleaning the toilets, but somebody else loves washing dishes or doing the cooking. And being able to kind of pull our own weight in our community or family life is part of what we do as human beings. So being able to resume those activities and be a part and contribute to our communities, whatever they are.
And maybe manage your home environment as well to make it more convenient for you to do things. Maybe it's a manipulation or a redistribution of the way you put dishes on a shelf or where you store pots and pans or whatever it may be to help you now with using a prosthesis to just accomplish things a little bit more easily.
Very, very important to really look at your environment, because it's not uncommon for us to learn to use the environment as an asset to help us perform certain tasks. For prosthetic training itself, continually asking people to give feedback about how the device, how they're able to use the device functionally. So contributing to that information, engaging them in functional skills training and actual tasks, sequences of tasks, because it's one thing to just sit down and cut your food, but it's quite another to set the table, sit down, eat your meal, clear the table, wash the dishes. Like, those are long sequences that we all engage in. So being able to use your prosthesis and tolerate wearing your prosthesis and using it effectively is a focus of this particular stage.
Yeah, and having the confidence that when you reach over and pick something up, you're going to be able to do it in a way that you have control, safe control over it, and you're going to have a good outcome. Absolutely. You're going to be able to do what you're trying to do. And
Absolutely.
that comes with just practice in many cases. The more you, it's like anything, a prosthesis can be, just view it as a tool, and the more you use that tool, the more skilled you'll become with it.
So in addition to those very common bimanual tasks that we use for self-care, home management, we also want to integrate back into the community. That includes things like going to the grocery store and being able to not just push a cart, but reach for objects, put them in the cart, pay for them, managing a wallet, or if you go to self-pay, being able to bag your own food and handle your recyclable bags and all that stuff, and then getting it in and out of your car, in and out of your vehicle, and back into your house. So I think about these kinds of tasks. Returning to work, what's involved with that? What's my work environment like? So being able to start to use the prosthesis to return to those activities and be able to articulate to my employer and my coworkers what I can do, what I might have challenges with, what adaptations I might need, because I'm becoming more aware of what my needs and abilities are with that prosthesis. So I'm kind of personifying it as a me because I've been through all this. And I think about that when I'm working with my clients.
Yeah, and how you interact in public too. Deb mentioned going to the grocery store. Well, I've had lots of incidences when I've had my grocery cart behind a mom with a little boy or a little girl, you know, and they see my arm, and it was like, wow. And sometimes they're very, very curious. Sometimes they're a little afraid because it's a foreign thing. They just don't know. So understanding how other people are going to react, and then in my case, I like to try to accommodate them and educate them in a way that they know that I'm not going to be any kind of a threat to them. And they're very curious about the technology. I like to call it, it's especially for young children, I'll say, you ever seen a robot arm before like that? And robot is something that they can understand. Prosthesis is a little bit beyond, but I'm part robot. And they go, you are? And then, yeah, come on, check it out. Come up. Take a look, touch it. It's not going to hurt. And then you watch the parent too. It's a little interaction there, a little dance that you do. But in most cases, it has a very warm outcoming.
Yeah. So you raised a really good point, and I think that speaks to where each of us might be from a psychosocial perspective with acceptance and even embodiment. So there are going to be times when you're a human being, right? You don't want to engage with somebody. You don't have to be the ambassador all the time. And I think it's important to allow yourself that limitation, if to use the word.
Certainly.
But I like to embrace.
Everybody likes personal space, certainly.
Yeah. But when you're ready for it, to be able to embrace those teachable moments, and those are great things to talk to your OT practitioner about, because we are actually mental health practitioners. A lot of our background is based, our whole profession is based in mental health. So helping you to move through that acceptance period and even role play scenarios where that you might handle. And even move your therapy session to a community session. I can't tell you how many times I've brought a client out into the community and we practice engaging with someone in a grocery store or negotiating. How do I navigate the dressing room in a store? Okay, like all those little things that we take for granted, that's part of our functional independence in the community and our ability to effectively navigate the community and be able to be perceived as competent socially. So I think that those are also very important elements of therapy that oftentimes people don't think about, they don't want to talk about, but certainly we should. So the last kind of phase of prosthetic training involves refinement, and many times people figure things out for themselves. And I think that's great. I love it when someone maybe doesn't need me to teach them to refine skills, but I'm always happy to help someone because oftentimes people find themselves in new circumstances. I've had people come back to me for refinement skills because they have learned a new vocation. And they're starting something new. Maybe they're going into the medical field and they need to learn how to apply the gloves, the disposable gloves. And what accommodations do they make for their prosthesis when gloves are required? Or other healthcare garments that we have to wear. So refinement can include handling those social skills that I previously spoke of, managing community living tasks and return to work or change in employment, recreation, is a huge one. And we've talked often through this series about embodiment, but that is certainly something that oftentimes happens when a person is at that level of refinement. So again, it's a process, right? It's a lifelong journey, kind of what you started with at the beginning of this session, or maybe it was last session, but what was that quote again?
Oh, today is the first day of the rest of your life.
Yeah.
It's a philosophy that I took on and embodied and helped me be a guide, so to speak, as to how I would navigate my future.
Yeah, it probably kept you hopeful.
Very much.
Yeah.
Very much.
This particular slide is really just intended to be a little bit of a reference or guide for you to how to manage your time and what you can expect in the rehab process. So it just shows you some of the ways that we as OT practitioners can spend our time wisely to help you learn to use your prosthesis and about how long that will take. I usually like to allow anywhere from 3 to 4 months for good prosthetic training. Oftentimes it does involve that one-to-one clinical intervention. However, whenever I can include people in peer groups, I try to do that. So one of the programs I started was something called Unlimited Wellness. And Unlimited Wellness is a program that uses telehealth to engage peers with each other, and we talk about different life experiences. How we can avoid secondary conditions is one, how we can further protect ourselves, and how we go about navigating and informing our healthcare providers, because not all of them are specialists in upper limb practice. Another thing we talk about is managing those awkward social moments, and that's kind of a cool time.
I've never had any.
I have a hard time believing that, but no. And we can also talk a lot about returning to work and relationships with others in our life. People talk about that. So it's an interesting concept, and if you're interested in learning more about Unlimited Wellness, you can certainly reach out to me with that info. We talked a little bit about what mechanisms we use to gain information about outcomes and how you're performing. So some of the ways we do that is with a user satisfaction query.
A more formal evaluation.
Yeah. Right. And there are some standardized tools. So there's something that's called the Quick Dash that is often used by practitioners. And there are several of them. The Opus is another one. But these help us to better understand your perception of disability, or the way I like to frame it is your perception of ability, because I'm a hopeful person. So I like to find out where you are with that. I like to look at function. So I might use different measures where you're actually performing tasks, and there's a rating scale for how you perform those tasks. If you drop objects frequently, or if you're able to recoup and regrasp something.
It allows you to coach the individual as to maybe being able to do something, taking a different approach to it, or it might reveal an inadequacy in the prosthesis. Mm-hmm. Maybe the harness could be adjusted to accommodate performing a little better. There's a lot of subtleties to it.
Right. There are a few other great functional tests. One is the BAMULA and the AMULA. Those have been used by the military and are excellent tools. Another one your therapist might use is the ACMC, which was developed in Sweden by Lottie Hermansson. And that's a great test. It was actually developed for use with myoelectric devices, but I have spoken with them about using it with voluntary closing because it works very well with that. And we've made several videos to try to prove that. And then there are some tests that really just look at grasping and releasing and speed, and that would be the box and blocks test. And then looking at your own satisfaction with the prosthesis itself, and that's that feedback form that we often use with our clients.
And all of these evaluations and tests and things like that are designed to help the therapist or the prosthetist understand how you're performing, so that they can again coach you to be even better.
Yeah, your best self.
Perform better.
Who doesn't want to be their best self? All right, we should take a couple minutes to talk about some of the nuances for persons with bilateral involvement. One of the most important things that I think is that a person with bilateral loss may not have symmetrical loss. And even if they do, they may not use devices that are symmetrical or exactly like each other. They might choose different tools depending on which hand is dominant or stronger versus the other that might be perceived as assistive.
Yeah, and what people need to understand too is like a unilateral absence like I have is one level of challenge. Bilateral absence isn't just twice as hard. It's got way more challenge than that. There's a lot more things that you have to think about. We've both worked with many people with bilateral absence, and the people that we know have done and lived very complete lives and done really well, and but they need a lot of coaching early on, and there's a lot that they have to get through.
So there's a great organization that was started, my goodness, maybe in the 1980s, right here in Colorado.
The first conference was of Skills for Life was in Denver, and I think they had the first 3 conferences here in Colorado, and now it operates out of Houston. But it's a very powerful organization. It focuses on rehabilitation and interaction of people with bilateral hand absence.
Exactly.
And many of those people also are missing 3, in some cases, quadrimembral absence, which is an incredible challenge for individuals. But it's a community. It's almost like a sorority fraternity of people who get to know each other and share their ideas and share their experiences to help each other.
Exactly, and it's actually international now. There's, I think they're called a quad squad out of Australia, and those are persons who have lost both upper and lower bilaterally. But it's a great organization. We have posted all of their resources. And I'll tell you, their executive director is an occupational therapy practitioner named Shawn Swanson Johnson. And she's incredibly approachable and has really put a lot of effort into growing this organization that actually was started by another occupational therapist and associated team. So that's our good friend, Diane Atkins, who has been a mentor and a good friend to me as well.
If you know someone, or if you have a bilateral hand absence yourself, become aware of Skills for Life. It's a conference that happens every 3 years. It's not every year, but it comes together in Texas, and it's very fulfilling, I think, for individuals that are challenged that way. It's just a very, very powerful experience.
Yeah, it's like going to MIT for a weekend. They are incredibly active on social media and are constantly producing tips, tricks, devices, resources for people. In fact, they just came out with a booklet, so you can access their resources here and learn more about them. We've talked about a lot of complex problems and situations with great outcomes that can affect any or all of us. Regardless of whatever prosthetic technology someone's using, there are challenges, but there's also a lot of innovation and great solutions to help you to be successful. And these innovations are not just with technology, they're actually with different strategies, right? Just learning new ways of doing things.
Some take-home messages, that we'd like to convey to you, and one of them is the team approach that you talked about so much. Certainly keeping a positive attitude for yourself is going to be important. It's not always easy to do that. There are always setbacks that individuals have. I can't tell you how many times I've dropped the same object and had to reach down and pick it up, screw or a nut or whatever it might be. But you pursue it. You just push through it, and you do it, and you succeed.
Absolutely, perseverance is key. Right? I like to call it diligence and not stubbornness. But making sure that you have a client-centered team and that your team is actually listening to you. So that takes communication. That your team is collaborative and working with you and for you. That they offer consultation to you as well as to each other so that it reinforces that collaboration. And that maybe they even include co-treatment so that you're being seen at the same time by several practitioners, not just one. It's a great way for us to have that interprofessional collaboration. Being open to creative alternatives that may not be high tech, but maybe every bit as effective or even more. Making sure that we're conscious and resourceful with our time, our money, and all of our energies. And recognizing that the solutions don't have to be complex.
And when I was talking about dropping things all the time, I wasn't talking about my prosthesis, I was talking about my regular hand.
Oh yeah, I believe it. And if it's not the regular hand, it's the eyesight that also goes. So, you know, we've got it going on. Here are just a few more resources for you to contact if you're so inclined. These have been helpful and to many people. And we hope you'll stay tuned. We've got at least another session coming, planned.
Yeah, with tips and tricks, and we're going to show you strategies and some real good visuals about just how we do things, Debbie and I, how we approach activities of daily living, and we hope you enjoy those, and they help give you some insight into how you could approach things yourself. And again, always, we're out there for you as a resource, so you can contact us. We're open to your questions and comments.
Yeah, thank you.